Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Just going to wait about 30 seconds to get all our registered attendees up and running, and we'll start promptly at 2:30. All right, I got the 2:30. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you're coming from. Probably not evening, but that's fine. My name is Chris. I'm a technical sales representative from Global Test Supply. Thank you for joining us for this webinar via Global Test Supply University. Today we'll be going over the topic of screening for elevated skin temperature with FLIR. We kindly ask you to remain on mute and mute yourselves throughout the entire presentation. It'll be about a 40 to 45 minute presentation with question and answers being taken at the end of the presentation. Please feel free to use the chat feature throughout if you have any questions. And like I said, we'll make sure that we get to them at the end right before we close out. We at Global Test Supply have been working closely with FLIR for many years. We pride ourselves on being a leading distributor of FLIR systems. This is a result of our dedication to offering you our product expertise, service, and competitive pricing. We'll get started today. The webinar is being presented by Russell Hall from FLIR. Russell is based out of Wisconsin and has been a channel partner manager for FLIR for about 1.5 years. To touch on, before we get the presentation started, any and all questions about inventory, quote requests, any additional information based on something that Global Test Supply can offer you, we'll have a slide at the end to give you all our contact information. Anything that can be, any questions that you have that are not covered during the presentation today, you can send an email to sales@globaltestsupply.com. In terms of inventory, we probably will be touching on it over the presentation. We're doing our best to make sure that our stock level is maintained and we're fulfilling orders as they come in. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Russell. Have a great one. Thank you for joining us.
Great, thanks, Chris. And yeah, good afternoon or good morning to everybody. Hope everybody's doing well today and ready to learn a little bit more about thermal imaging and what FLIR is doing and has been doing to help with pandemics such as the one that we're in currently. So with that, just a quick agenda. We'll go over a little bit of the history of EST, or elevated skin temperature solutions, how to get the best measurements, what are some of the key things to look for, what things can create, or what different environmental factors can create, changes, and then at the end, obviously, some of our solutions that we have today. So first, a little bit about FLIR, who we are. Global organization, been around for about 50 years. We have several different market segments: government, defense, security, industrial. So at the core of it, we are a sensor company. So FLIR stands for forward-looking infrared. So at the core of FLIR, we're a technology company based on sensor. So with EST, or EBT, elevated body temperature, it's been around for, FLIR's been doing it for about 17 years. So we first started back in the 60s, and then in 2003, we had the SARS outbreak. So at that time, we had some solutions that we brought to market for screening humans. Shortly thereafter, we registered with the FDA, and we're FDA approved and cleared. So we had a spike of sales then. And then in 2009, same type of thing, H1N1, or better known as the swine flu, broke out. And again, these are more regional. So where the swine flu was, we again saw an uptick in our cameras. So we've constantly, over the last 17 years, been adding things and keeping that in the back of our mind. It's not the #1 sales application that we see with our cameras, but it has been steadily more and more looked at. In 2014, there was the Ebola outbreak. So again, companies, people, called on FLIR to help keep their, the people coming in that they're interacting with safe. Now with coronavirus here in 2020, obviously for us in the States and in Canada, North America, it's been one of the bigger pandemics that has really hit us and touched close to home. So a lot more sensitivity around this subject and keeping people safe now that it's, we're actually living it. So we've again created some solutions. We already had solutions ready to go, but we're evolving those solutions as well as we move through this and more pandemics to come. So again, since 2004, we've been FDA approved. This is our original certificate here. Over the course of those, 17 years, 16 years, we've added more products and have those registered as well. But we've been in this game for quite some time, not only thermal imaging in general, but also screening humans. We've been doing this for a while. We didn't just pop up, over the course of the last 2 or 3 months, with something clever. So markets and customer types, right now it's you kind of throw some of this out the window because it's really where there's a gathering of people. So that doesn't really matter if you're manufacturing or entertainment or security or travel, because all of those environments have people gathering. So, so we're seeing it across all industries, all customer types. So let's get into a little bit of the science and a little bit of how our cameras work and in our solutions. So first, the setup of your system is critical to detect EST. Now you can look at these pictures, the one on the left and the one on the right, and I'll just give you, 10 seconds to really kind of, 10, 20 seconds to really kind of digest what you're looking at and what some of the downfalls might be. And trust me, it's not the camera, that's the downfall. These are FLIR cameras. But try and look, at these images and what concerns or, is this possible you might have. I know we're all on mute, so I'll just give you a few seconds here and then we'll kind of talk about it. And this will come up later in the presentation as well after we've kind of gone through the lesson. So when I first see this, this image on the left here, I see a couple folks. This gentleman, he's got glasses on, a mask on. The woman next to him, a mask and a burqa or a head wrap. And then when you're actually looking at the screen, this monitor, you see 4 individuals in this image. So it looks to be 2 males over here to the left, and then a parent, whether it's male or female, can't really tell, carrying a small child. So these 4 people are all passing through this camera at the same time, essentially. In particularly, the man on the left, he's looking away. He's not even looking at the camera. This person is kind of looking at the camera. Maybe they're curious, hey, what's that pointing at me? And then you have the parent and the child's, got its, they're kind of like cheek to cheek, almost looking backwards. Really not making any contact with that camera, not looking at it at all. And we'll discuss this more later. And then this image on the right, again, you see somebody with what looks to be like a head wrap, eyeglasses, a mask. This gentleman really close here is blurry. You can't make out any of their facial features. So these are all lookouts that you want to be aware of when you're setting up your system. The system is really only as good as the setup and understanding some of the limitations of thermal imaging in screening for elevated skin temperature. FDA announcement just in April, came out, and a lot of stuff, right, is evolving. Guidance from the WHO is evolving. FDA guidance, all of this stuff is evolving. So, we understand that, and we're doing our best to stay on top of it and making sure that we're doing everything that we need, to satisfy and keep people safe that want to use our technology. But one of the big things is that the technology should be used to measure only one subject's temperature at a time. So again, when we look at those pictures that we just saw, multiple people on the screen, everybody coming in from different angles, we're not seeing that that's going to be the best correlation to what a true body temperature is. So we call this passive and active screening, and hopefully this works. I'm actually going to go live to an image of myself. Chris, you see me in thermal, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So, and I apologize, I'm getting better at this, but it's like, kind of like looking at a mirror. So this is shot on, what I'm using right now is our E53 camera. This is an FDA approved camera. One of the small downfalls of this camera is that it's not autofocus. So when I come closer or go farther away, it's going to get me out of focus. And we just saw one of those pictures with that gentleman that appeared to be out of focus. And we'll talk about why that is a limitation or a lookout. So if you look at the screen, and I apologize for my quarantine hair and my quarantine beard, but you'll see up here this X with the line above it at 97.9. This looks like a bell. That's our alarm set at 99.7. And then this temperature reading that's constantly changing is the active reading of myself in this instance. So this is the person that you're screening. There's two settings here, or three settings rather, that you can do. So the silhouette is big. So you see this silhouette, it's bigger, this one's smaller. This means that I'm, it's meant for about 3 feet away. And I'm probably pretty close to about arm's length. And at that a little more than arm's length away, my face pretty much fills up the silhouette on the screen. If you were, about 6 feet away, then you can set this target and it'll shrink down that silhouette and make it better for somebody to be standing farther away. So now let's play around a little bit. So again, this alarm threshold is set at about 1.8 degrees over the average. So anything at 99.7 or above, you'll start to see flicker red, and then that, let's see if I can get something. I don't know if I'll be able to set it off myself. There you go, slightly. So 99.7, I'm right there. Now again, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm sick, it just means I'm 99.7. How I got this average, so this 97.9, the way that our cameras work is that we take a sample average, is what we call it. Minimum of 10 persons, you take their temperature reading. And so for this, I shot this at my wife just a little bit ago, and I took her sample 10 times just to activate the camera. But if I took her temperature and our neighbor's temperature and our dog's temperature or whatever, the camera will take all of those temperature readings, so 98, 97.5, 96.9, 98.3, they'll take all of those temperature readings, it'll give you a sample of, or an average rather, of the temperature. And so that's indicative of, okay, on today, Tuesday, June 9th, I'm in southern Wisconsin, it's hot and humid outside. Most folks are running at about 97.9 degrees. For anybody that's 1.8 to 2 degrees hotter, and you can set that, you can set this to 0.1 degrees over or 1 degree, 2.3 degrees. We usually recommend about 1.8 to 2.0 degrees Fahrenheit over your average temperature. That's going to potentially raise concern. This person is running a little warmer than most of the people in that same environmental setting. So we will come back to this. So again, this is, so passive versus active. Here's a picture of this as well. Chris, you're back on my PowerPoint, correct?
Yes, back on the PowerPoint.
Perfect. I just want to make sure I don't have any technical difficulties. So this is one of my colleagues. He did a similar test where you use the same software, right? His average is 95.5. He set the alarm at 2 degrees over. In this picture on the left, he was 96.3 degrees. You see the red crosshair here, and it's right at the bridge of his nose. That's where he's reading 96.3 degrees. This was taken, a month ago. May 11th at 12:58. 1 minute later, he took his glasses off, he took his hat off, looked directly at the camera now instead of away from it. So this is an active reading as opposed to a passive reading. Now his temperature reading is 97.9 degrees, or 1.6 degrees over what it was just a minute ago. So he didn't, his homeostasis didn't all of a sudden jump 1.6 degrees. His inner core body temperature didn't all of a sudden just jump 1.6 degrees. It was a minute later. He didn't have time to go run a marathon. All he did was take his glasses off and his hat, but mainly his glasses came off and he looked at the camera. And you see that this red crosshair now is focused at the inner corner of his eye, his tear duct, or the eye canthus is what it's called. So now he's reading 97.9 degrees, and in this case would indicate potential high body temperature, that he could potentially be carrying an infectious disease or be ill or get other people ill. So skin temperature is not always core temperature. Again, here's just another photo. You can see with this box, the region of interest here, just by the color, right? And then by his eyes, the eyes are a lot warmer than is the forehead. So just because you get a reading on the forehead that's 98.6 degrees, and we all learned that in science class in 6th grade, that 98.6 degrees is where you want to be. You get that reading on the forehead, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what your core body temperature is. Your core body temperature could be vastly different. There's several environmental factors. If you're in the sun, if it was cold outside, your skin's going to be colder. So anything can either make your temperature hotter or bring it down. But the inner corner of the eye is going to remain a lot more constant. So again, this is what we're talking about. Just that eye canthus is really where you want to be focused in on, and that's going to be the best correlation to your core body temperature. And then again, glasses off, please. So if we go back to live, we'll test a couple things. You saw some images, but just so you can see it live. And again, I apologize. I'm trying to do this like a mirror. So right now, the camera is reading about 99.3, 99.5, 99.3, 99.5, right? Pretty constant. I throw my glasses on, and I cover up my eyeballs there. And now it's going to like my nose. If I even breathe out of my nose or suck air in, it's going to read those different temperatures. But now the camera is reading 98.4, 98.6, jumping around the nose region. But again, take the glasses off. Now it's going to focus right back up on the eyeballs, or that hottest area, which is 99.5. So again, about a 1 degree temperature change. This one is more accurate, going off the inner canthus of the eye. Now, if I go and make this, so let's remember the 99.5. Now, if I go and get a little out of focus, I'll kind of stand back to where I was. Now I just lost half a degree. Now it's 99 degrees. So imagine, people coming in and out of the frame, too many people in the frame at different distances, one person 5 feet away from the camera, another person 10 feet away from the camera. If you're focused at 5 feet, you can't be focused at 10 feet. So if that person at 10 feet never comes within 5 feet of that camera, they're never going to get a good reading. So there's a lot of things that you want to be wary of and take into consideration when you're setting up your testing environment and making sure that you have all these things ready to go and giving you the best ability for a good test. All right. So variance of core body temperatures, right? So we understand that. How do we get over it? How do we get around it? How does a camera react to it? So this is a test that we did. It's just one person. They're basically sitting at the office. So again, not doing jumping jacks, not sitting out in the sun, just in room temperature, just kind of sitting at their desk. And what we did was we took our camera and we took their measurement for 25, each minute for 25 minutes. And then we just plotted it here. So, the delta. So over the course of time, so 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and then the temperature change. And this is in degrees Celsius. So that person, really remains steady. And our bodies are going to be constantly changing just a little bit. Now, we don't want to see a 1 degree swing here in the course of 10 minutes or 15 minutes with a person just sitting still and idle. But, they are going to fluctuate a little bit. And our camera, throughout the whole 25 minutes was giving that steady reading of where that person was and really kept them at pretty close to zero delta change. We did another test where we took about 80 individuals, again, over at the office in Nashville, New Hampshire, and we took their readings, and then we plotted all of those readings as well. And we also used a couple different cameras throughout this. We've been getting a lot of requests for, hey, can I buy this tool and do this test? No, but it's a thermal imaging camera. Yes, it's a thermal imaging camera, but it might not be powerful enough to give the results that you want or that you really need. So we want to make sure that we're using the right cameras, and when we do submit these to FDA approval, we are submitting the right ones and getting that clearance from them. So on this chart right here is people on the x-axis, so up to about 80 different people. We took their camera, we took their temperature with 2 different cameras, one with our EXX in the blue and one with our EX cameras in the black. And you see that the black has a lot more different swings. So a lot more highs and a lot more lows, where the blue remains a little more steady. Now, again, this is different people. So we're not expecting everybody to be the same temperature, right? Again, in 6th grade science, we learned that we all run at 98.6 degrees. But that's not always going to hold true. Very rarely will you have multiple people at 98.6 degrees exactly. So this just kind of made sure that we're testing and using the right equipment. So what changes, or what are the different factors why people are running at different temperatures? So based on the time of day, if it's cool in the morning or hot in the middle of the day and then cool again at night, that's going to change. Our activity level, again, it might go with the time of day. Diet, gender, ethnicity, and age. All these different things can play a different factor. I'm sure everybody on this call knows somebody that was always cold, right? It could be 90 degrees outside, baking in the sun, and they're still putting on a sweatshirt. Or it could be 30 degrees outside and you got a friend or a buddy that's wearing shorts, and it's freezing cold out. So I'm sure we all kind of know those people, and that's like, yeah, like I'm running hot, or maybe it's your child, right? Like, oh, my child's always running hot. So different people have different temperatures. Now you say, okay, so if everybody has a different temperature, then how do we find the ones that are too hot? How do we find the ones that are potentially carrying this infectious disease? That's what we use the averaging or the screening for. Again, I went through a couple examples where we have the 3 temperature readings at the top of the screen. And I'll just flip to it real quick. So again, in this case, my average is 97.9. And again, we got that from having multiple people, minimum of 10 people, come through the camera, get their temperature reading, and then it averages into the system. So at that point, we get our temperature average of 97.9. Now we're just looking for anomalies above 97.9. People that are running, again, 1.8 to 2 degrees over that 1.9, we can say, hey, that doesn't seem very normal for this day, for this season, for this shift. If you're at a factory and you run 3 shifts, you're running a little hot. Maybe you need to get further screening. Maybe you need to, not come to work today because you're a potential risk to your fellow employees. So we at FLIR are interested in what that delta temperature change is, not necessarily an absolute temperature. We're not always looking for somebody that's, over 100 degrees. If we're always looking for somebody that's over 100 degrees and it's a cold day in the middle of January or February, well, it's going to be difficult for a lot of people to get to 100 degrees. And you might have somebody sick at 99.3 degrees. But if you had this averaging temperature in the screening as compared to their peers or the people in that same environment, now that core, that average temperature come down to the 97s, and now when you have a 99.3 or 98.7, now that person will come to light. So again, we kind of walk through this. So this is your sampled average temperature, 97 degrees. Your alarm, in this case, it's set 4 degrees hotter. Again, we usually recommend 1.8 to 2 degrees. And then what the actual person in your field of view or reference is 96.1, this gentleman in this case. So also we need stable and fast cameras to detect the temperature, right? We don't want this to be a huge bottleneck, and we want it to be accurate. So in this chart right here, this is one person being measured over the course of now just seconds. So this is just 4 seconds. Our cameras are 30 hertz, so they're taking 30 frames per second. So we get a lot of data points when we're using our cameras, which is great. So at first, when the person, this person comes into screen, they hop up to 31.4 degrees. And then a split second later, not even milliseconds later, they jump down to, almost like 30.9, 30.85 degrees. But then after about a half a second and then like a second, you see that these plots start to even out. And now you're just having these little jumps from, this is in degrees Celsius, from about 31.5 to about 30.5 or 30.8 or 30.9 degrees. So really just like a plus or minus 0.1 Celsius when you're looking at this over the course of a few seconds. And I think we kind of see this when I go back to live, right? If I just stay here and I'm steady, now I'm warming up. Maybe I'm getting nervous presenting to you guys, and my body's heating up a little bit. So now you see, it's going to jump a little bit from 99.9 to 100, 99.9 to 100. So over the course of a few seconds, it's going to be very, very stable. When I just pop in and out of screen, and depending what's in field of view, you're going to have that quick jump, 99.7, and then when I look at it, now it's going to stabilize again. So in that first millisecond, you're going to have that spike or that drop, depending on getting the person looking right at the camera, and the camera just, finding your face. And then, again, after a quick, still, active look at the camera, you'll get that good baseline reading. It'll take you, a second, even less than a second, to get that done. So again, when we go back to these pictures, right, the camera is really only as good as the process being implemented. So again, here we have this person, blurry. We have these multiple people walking through. It looks like they're just walking through, potentially not pausing. Maybe this gentleman took his glasses on and off really fast. I would venture to guess no. So when he passed through, the camera could only look at, his forehead, maybe his neck region, not getting that inner corner of the eye, let alone him looking at the camera. Over here, the gentleman out of focus. Again, when we looked at my camera, myself out of focus, it dropped, a half a degree right away. If I'm even more out of focus, it's going to drop even more than that. Multiple people in this screen. The average on this reading also hasn't been updated, or was taken wrongly. You see the average of 20 degrees Celsius. That's really cold. You would expect in degrees Celsius that to be around 36, 35, 35 degrees Celsius. So their average or their baseline is way off. Their alarm of 36 degrees, I guess that's not so bad, but what was their baseline for that day? Were they shooting a cold drink of water? How did they get 20 degrees? One of the other things that get brought up, and maybe there's some questions out there, or after this call, is black bodies are using a temperature reference. So black bodies, there's some pros and cons to black bodies. Our cameras can be absolutely used with a black body. They don't, however, they do not require a black body because we do that averaging screening. So we're taking the average of, again, minimum 10 people, take their average, and then we're just looking for an anomaly above that. So the black bodies, the correct way to use a black body, however, is to have it in the same plane as the person that you're imaging. So, here's the thermal camera pointing at me. You want the black body to be right next to the person in their same plane of reference. You don't want it closer. You don't want it farther away, because then again, you run into that focus issue, right? The camera is trying to focus on both me, the subject, and the black body, and it's not going to be able to do that. So you want to make sure that you have it in the same plane. The black body is another expense. It's another piece of equipment that you need to calibrate. And it's another complexity, right? You need to have it plugged in. So maybe you have to have your camera plugged in, a monitor plugged in, maybe a laptop if you're trying to run this off a laptop, and plug in the black body. You need a space where you can plug in and do all of those things. If you're using our handheld cameras, you can do it off of a battery for the camera, but it's another thing that you need. One of the biggest points of the black body is it says, okay, this black body, standing next to me is, 94 degrees or 100 degrees. So the theory is the camera says, okay, if I know this is 100 degrees and my camera is reading this at 100 degrees, then it makes me more confident that this person that I'm reading truly is 98.5 degrees or whatever the camera says, right? And that's where we have used our stability testing and our performance testing to make sure that we're always getting that accurate reading. So our cameras don't need to rely on an outside source to make sure that they're accurate. We make our cameras accurate enough that they just come right at the person. There's also some cooling mechanisms that we use in our cameras to keep the environment inside that camera core nice and consistent. And then there's also something called a NUC, an NUC, a non-uniformity control. And what that does is there's actually kind of like a mini black body. So if you've used our cameras before, really any thermal imaging camera, you'll hear it click where it kind of like recalibrates. And what it's doing is it's kind of like a black body. This thing comes down and it's a known temperature. It's like a lens, or a cap in front of the thermal core comes down and says, okay, this should be, 100 degrees. And the camera says, yep, it's 100 degrees. And then a minute or two later, it comes down and says 100 degrees. And this is just like a blink of an eye, that fast. It says, yep, it's 100 degrees. So the camera is doing that, whether you're screening a human or whether you're screening an electrical panel, the camera is doing that every time that you use it, making sure that it's being accurate. Again, the black bodies, when used in the right way, can give you another just sense of, satisfaction. Cameras can be used with the black bodies. FLIR just does not make them. We don't sell them. So a few conclusions. So the best correlation to core body temperature is the inner corner of the eye, right? The tear duct, if you will. We saw that putting glasses on, not looking at the camera straight on, all those things can really impact what the core body temperature is. Environmental factors also influence your skin temperature, whether you're sweating, outside in a cold day, outside in a hot day. If you just ran a mile or did 50 push-ups, all those things can really can really influence your skin temperature. And those body temperatures are based on numerous factors, right? Whether you're male, female, a child, the time of day, all those different things can impact your readings. And then camera measurement, stability is critical, right? Our cameras are rated when in screening mode to plus or minus 0.5 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're even achieving better than that in all of the tests that we're doing. But plus or minus 0.5 degrees Fahrenheit is going to be very accurate for these cameras. And then lastly, like we just talked about, EST is about comparing to a reference or to other people, not an absolute temperature measurement. We're not always looking for somebody that's 100.4. Again, we're looking for somebody that's just hotter than normal. So some of our screening solutions that FLIR has. We have both handheld cameras and fixed mount or automated cameras as well. So there's pros and cons to both, like anything, right? But with the battery operated or the handheld cameras, one of the nice things with these is these are the cameras that we've been making and selling for 50 years. Traditionally, these cameras are used for predictive and preventative maintenance. Again, same theory applies. You're looking for heat anomalies, so you can use these cameras screening an electrical panel. And if you see a fuse or something or a bearing that's too hot, you see that, hey, this is different than the other three in this fuse, in this switch box. This is different. You can point it at a house and say, hey, it looks like a lot of cold air coming through this wall, a lot of hot air coming through this wall. Maybe there's no insulation there. You're looking for those heat anomalies. So the same camera that is, a professional tool for predictive and preventative maintenance is also a professional tool for screening humans. So today this can be set up, or in the morning it can be set up screening people coming into your building, and then in the afternoon or later that morning you can drop this down if you're in a manufacturing plant or what have you, or a bigger building, and give it to one of your facilities techs, your MRO guys. Say, hey, now you can use this to go make sure that our press machine stamping out, our metal products is working. Because if that press machine gets heated up or clams up or whatever, and it breaks down, well, to repair that press machine is $500,000, and it's going to be down for a week, and the lost productivity during that week is $1 million, right? Here you have a solution that both screen people coming into your building safely, and then also and also potentially save your machine before it burned up, before that motor burned up, before it dried out, and you put more lube on it to save that machine and save all that time and save all that money. These cameras can be mounted on a tripod. So I have my camera currently mounted on a tripod. Obviously, I wasn't holding it. It's mounted on a tripod, so you don't have to stand there, hold it the whole time as you're screening people. The screening mode comes on board, so it's out of the box, ready to go. We have some new software even coming out that makes this even a little bit easier. And so as those solutions come out, it can always be added. You can update the firmware, the software. You can always do that after, if and when we come out with something new and enhance your camera. It also connects to a monitor. So it's one thing that the operator has a nice 4-inch screen here that they can see, but also you can connect these. There's USB ports and jacks. You can connect these to a monitor, so the person being screened, like I am right now, I can look at my computer monitor that has my thermal image on it. So the person being screened, this can be connected to the monitor, so they know exactly where to stand. Be a little easier and faster for them to put their head in the box, look at the camera, and then get the go no go alarm. Another thing, so with the alarms, there's both audible and visual alarms. So I have my audible off. It's actually pretty loud. You can adjust the volume, but it just beeps. It's like beep, 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 beep. You can turn that on or off. And then you also have that visual alarm. I think when I set it off a couple times, you see that the alarm really turns red, indicating that somebody is over that alarm threshold. The models for this are EXX series, so like our E75, E85, E95, and then also our T series cameras, our T530, T540, and even cameras above, T840, T1010, T1020, all of those cameras. We recommend a camera with at least 320 by 240 resolution. Reason being is that the region of interest is, again, the tear duct of the person. So that's a very, very small space that you need to measure. So if you have a camera with only, 160 by 120 pixels and you're standing, 3 to 6 feet away, that image is not going to be, that target on the person is going to be a lot bigger than what is a tear duct. So the target will look like this. It'll get the bridge of the nose, it'll get some of the eye, it'll get some of that tear duct, but it's going to average everything inside this circle. And so now the tear duct, again, might read, 101 degrees Fahrenheit. And that would indicate that this person is potentially not healthy. But if it takes in, some of the eyebrow, some of the bridge of the nose, and those temperature readings are, 98 degrees, 97 degrees, well, now that one pixel reading will take all of those temperature readings and average it, and they'll say, hey, this person's 99.2 degrees. That's not so bad. Let them come in to our building. So again, that's why you need a camera that's powerful enough to really detect and get a good look at the inner corner of the eye. We also have fixed mounted solutions. Again, traditionally, these are meant for 24/7 condition monitoring. So a FLIR stack, an important motor or conveyor belt. People use these cameras for early fire detection in waste and recycle plants. You have all this waste and recycling material and can combust and create heat, and then naturally combust and start a fire. These cameras can say, hey, something in this pile of stuff has now reached 120 degrees. Somebody go over there, check it out, bring a bucket of water or bring a forklift or something and shake things out, make sure that this doesn't create a fire. So these automation solutions are both for predictive preventative maintenance and then again, easily compatible with screening humans. We just came out with a few new cameras, A400, A700 series cameras to do this and replace some of our other cameras. So again, there's software for these. Now these, they require a monitor. So like we see in our handheld units, you have the LCD screen there and you get that thermal image in the rear of the camera as you're holding it. With these automation cameras, it's just the lens, and then it needs to be connected and send that signal to a computer or a different monitor so you can actually see what that camera is seeing. These need to be plugged in. They can be accessed through IP, so you could access these remotely with that IP address once you configure the camera to do so. All right. So moving right along, I guess really our last slide here, and then we can open up to some questions, is, FLIR has been in this game, not only the human screening game for over 10 years, but thermal imaging in general for 50 years. We have some nice turnkey solutions that can, again, like we talked about, the handhelds today can be used for screening humans, and then quote unquote tomorrow used for something else. And then if another pandemic comes through in 2 years or whatever, you're ready to go. They're easy to use. You don't need any really special training to use them. A lot of them are ready to go out of the box. All you got to do is set it up and make sure that people are passing through in the correct manner. You can integrate them into existing systems. So kind of talking to some of our automated solutions, you can integrate these into other solutions or other systems that you might have at your place of work. We do have global service and training. Trainings like this, partnering with groups like, Global Test Supply. This has been great. We appreciate it. And then this dual purpose, again, I think I've touched on this, sorry, screen people and machines, with one solution. It's not, you need to buy multiple solutions to achieve multiple applications. It's one size fits all, and it's professional for all applications. With that, I'll kind of turn it back to Chris, if he's received any questions during the presentation and or any other things that I might have missed, Chris.
That's perfect. Thank you very much, Russell, for the presentation. It was fantastic. I know a lot of you out there are going to be thinking maybe information overload. There's a lot to take in all at the same time. So please, we have a little over 15 minutes to take any and all questions that you have. We'll try and cover absolutely anything that you throw our way. So please use the chat feature for any and all questions. We do have questions that have come in already and throughout the presentation. Diane has a couple of questions. And Diane and another attendee, Douglas, asked the same question: is there a laser involved in any of these cameras, and is there anything harmful coming from these cameras for, you know, something to be concerned about using for humans?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that that question. It's a great question. And there are lasers on the cameras. However, and I apologize if you can hear my dog in the background. However, when you're in screening mode, the laser goes off. It disables the laser. So the laser, you know, might be helpful for something that you're shooting, you know, 10 feet away or 20 feet away or something in the air. You want that laser to make sure that you're pointing the camera in the right area of interest. But once you enter screening mode, it could be, the laser could be harmful to someone, should hit them in the eye. So the camera automatically disables it. So great question. Everything else, you know, there's nothing else, the camera pointing at you, it's not, you know, emitting, you know, any sort of like x-rays or anything like that. It's not, you know, throwing anything at the person that's harmful. The laser would be harmful, but again, it's automatically disabled when you enter screening mode. So good question, and sorry I didn't mention that before.
It's perfect. You did mention the software earlier, and we do have a question about the temperature parameters and the range that you showed on the screen. Can they be altered both in the camera and using the software, or one or the other?
Sure. So so now it's saying, so some time went on that I've had this camera on. So now it's saying operator action, 2 samples are needed. So there's a button on the camera. Let me find it real quick. There's a button on the camera. It's called our P button. So we use this button to do a bunch of different things. So you can set the camera that every X amount of minutes, you know, whether it's 30 minutes or 15 minutes or an hour, whatever you want, the camera will say, okay, I need a new sample. And so what it's doing is it's taking the first 10 samples, and now it says, okay, I need another sample. And it's going to average in that 11th temperature, if you will, and drop off the first one. So it's always refreshing. So now when I hit this, and again, I'm not, you know, in focus, but I hit the P button once, takes it really quick, hit it one more time, and now that goes away. It says updated to 98.24. So now it took those last 2 samples of myself, and now has averaged those readings in. I didn't really look, I just hit the button pretty quick. Took those in and averaged those in with the last 8 sample readings before that. So you can constantly change this. We recommend minimum once a day. So if you're just in an office building, maybe it's, you know, there's 8 to 5 type of environment, and you're screening people as they come in the morning, you know, we want that sample updated for that day and then the next day. Or if you're going to screen people, if you have a lot of visitors, maybe screening visitors, you might want to do that and continue to update that sample or that reference temperature. Because now, again, the person that came in, you know, the go-getter that comes in at 6:45 in the morning is going to be in a different environment than the person that comes in after lunch, you know, a visitor, you know, at noon, right? So you want to continually update that sample, and then the camera allows you to do that, and it'll actually prompt you to do that to make sure that you're staying on top of it.
That's perfect. So just a reminder for everyone, if you do have a question, please use the chat feature. We have plenty of time right now to answer any and all. Another question that came in is pertains to, I guess, an individual application, but do any of the cameras that FLIR have come with or have enclosures that would be good for hazardous or dirty environments, manufacturing, mills, mines, etc.?
Yes, our automation cameras do have enclosures for both, you know, like rain, debris, you know, for security reasons, right, to protect it and kind of lock it down. You know, should somebody take a baseball bat to it or something, you know, we'll do our best to protect it for all those things. The enclosures, when you're using the enclosure for human screening, it will, so there's something that goes over the lens, and so that will adjust it slightly. In the case of looking for somebody that's 100.1 degrees versus 99.7 degrees. That slight adjustment with the enclosure on it is not recommended. Now, if you have this enclosure next to your steel press, again, I use that as an example, and you have, it's in a hot environment, you got people moving around, steel and all this stuff. Now, if you have that enclosure on and it sways the accuracy slightly by, let's say, a half a degree, well, if you're reading something that's, 250 degrees or 248 degrees, it doesn't really matter. At that point, it's too hot, you have an issue. But when we are looking at something more sensitive like human body temperature, and it is a tighter window, from 97.5 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, in that tighter window, accuracy is a premium. And so putting an enclosure over one of these cameras and using it for human screening would not be recommended. So hopefully that answers that question.
That's
I
perfect.
kind of turned it into a twofold.
No, that was perfect. A question from Matt came in. Is there any way to incorporate multiple cameras to work together in order to be able to scan more people or multiple people at once?
Yep, so we recommend a one camera to one person ratio. So the way, and we have like some collateral, and it's kind of going to be like going through TSA, if you will, right? As you're going through the TSA line, they say, make sure you don't have a water bottle on you. Make sure your bathroom supplies are in a separate bag. And then you get closer, right? Make sure you have your ID out, all this stuff. So there is a little bit of a learning curve, but what we're seeing is that companies, it might take them the first day, like 10 seconds per person, because for us, our TSA guidelines are, if you will, are make sure you take your glasses off, make sure you stand here, make sure you look at the camera. So the first day or the first couple of days, somebody like, oh, like, what's this? How does it work? What do I got to do? Oh, I got to take my glasses off, or I got to stand here. But then after just a few times coming through, that person knows, you got an X on the ground. I stand here, I look here. The camera, as we saw, gets your temperature reading in a half a second. So long as that person looks at the camera, makes direct contact, gets their reading, you're going to be in and out under a second. Then it takes the next person who's, theoretically 6 feet behind them waiting to get screened. It takes them 2 or 3 seconds to walk that X, look at the camera. Now you can start filtering through people, one every 4 to 5 seconds. The best, so, can we do multiple people? The best way to really improve this is, unfortunately, getting more cameras. Again, with multiple people, you're going to have to stand farther away, right? It's kind of like taking a selfie on your phone. To take a selfie with just myself, right? I can get myself in view pretty easy by just doing this. But now when I want my wife in the picture, I got to extend my arm even farther. If I want my kids in the picture, I got to extend my arm even farther, right? To make sure that the camera can capture everybody. So it's the same kind of concept. To get more people into the field of view, the camera's going to have to be farther away. And now that pixel resolution is being diluted for looking right at the inner corner of their eye. And so now you're going to be taking bigger temperature readings of the person's face, not necessarily their eyeball. So that is one thing too that us and the FDA are concerned about, doing multiple people at one time. There is a way though with the automation cameras, or even some of the handhelds, I guess, you could have one operator run 2 or 3 or 4 different cameras. So if you have 4 lanes, you could have one person, giving the audible commands, making sure when somebody is or does have elevated skin temperature, that either they're pulled out of the line for additional screening, or sent back home, or whatever that next step is for that organization. And then also with our automation cameras, they can be connected with the IP address. So you could have one monitor, and like in football season, right? If you watch NFL Red Zone, you could go quad box with 4 cameras. You could bring 4 cameras, kind of like a security that you see in the movies. A security guy in his office or what have you, looking at one computer screen with 8 different cameras on it. You can do that with the automation cameras, as you can connect to each of their unique IP addresses.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. The next question is kind of a product comparison. But do any of the cameras use AI? Frank adds in a Fotric 226B camera as a product comparison to find out whether or not the camera or the software uses any AI.
Sure. No, great question. And yes, so there are some solutions out there that have, facial recognition. So AI for facial recognition. That is something that we are launching here, like this week or next week. I'm getting more information on it by the day, actually, right now. So this is something that we are developing and we'll be ready to deploy very shortly. With that, the way we're going to be able to do that, and again, you can enhance the cameras. If you have cameras today, this will be something that you can upgrade in the field, call it field upgrade. So the camera will need to have dual streaming. So streaming for the visual reference of the person, and then streaming for the thermal image as well. And then with that visual reference, that visual stream, we will have facial recognition that will find a person's eyes, nose, and mouth. Even to the point where if you have glasses on or a mask on that's covering your nose and your mouth, then it'll say like, hey, I can't find your face, or it'll detect a mask and it can tell you like, take your mask off. So yes, there are the Fotrics, there's a few others out there that have facial recognition today, and they're touting that. Again, I challenge you, it's cool that they can have people walk through, maybe they're saying you can walk through really fast. It's like a snake line, right? You can walk through and we'll find your face. Okay, it finds your face, and even to the point where I can be looking like this and it still says, hey, here's a person's face. Or even I've seen some where it's somebody's totally looking away and it recognizes that this is a human head, says, hey, this is somebody's face. When in reality, it's, my quarantine hair, all this hair that I have, and it's not going to give a good reading. So facial recognition is really just one aspect to it. It wasn't the first thing we were interested in. It's obviously over the course of our 50 years being in business, it hasn't been a huge focus, and we're getting the thermal right and making sure and finding out the best way to get an accurate reading. So, I'm not poo-pooing on facial recognition. We're coming out with it. It's going to enhance it. I'm just saying the way that you run your test and how they're getting their temperature reading is more important than if it can find and detect your face or not. So, but good question. It's definitely, one of those hot topic buzz item, words, especially as there's a lot of everyday people that have never, maybe never been exposed to thermal imaging. Maybe they've seen it in the movies like, Rambo and Predator, which a plug, those are our cameras in those movies. But, with this new technology, there's a lot of questions coming out there. And then some things sound important, or some things sound like you must have or you must need it, and then you kind of gloss over really the true sense of what you're trying to accomplish, and that's letting healthy people into your building and not allowing unhealthy people into your building.
That's perfect. So we are coming to the closing point at this point. I'm just going to remind everyone, you can try and get your questions into the chat feature in the next couple of minutes. We will have a transcript and be able to go back and take a look at any questions that we were unable to answer. Also, if you have any questions after the webinar, not thinking of it right now, we didn't answer your question as closely as you'd like, you can always email us at sales@globaltestsupply.com. Any questions that we're unable to answer, we'll work with Russell to get the appropriate answer for any and everything. So we'll take one last question. This is going to be, I'm going to let Russell answer it, and then I'm going to elaborate a little bit further. The question is about cost and terms set up with Global Test Supply, but the question also alludes to lead times and delivery times for the range of cameras available.
Sure. Yeah, no, I appreciate that question. So, over the last 3 months, we've been under some unprecedented demand for our cameras. We make our cameras, we make our cores in the camera cores in California, and then we assemble and make the rest of the camera in Sweden. So the demand the last couple of months has been unprecedented. So right now we are, right around probably 10 to 12 week lead time on most all of our cameras. So that's the EXX series and the T500 series as well. So it's a good thing and a bad thing, right? Obviously, there's a lot of demand. We love to be able to fill all the demand. Some people are looking for a solution tomorrow. That's just not necessarily a thing we can do right now. We're making them as quick as we can, but real lead times are about 10 to 12 weeks at this junction. We are investing. We've invested millions of dollars already to improve and ramp up our production. But then also, during this pandemic, a lot of our suppliers for our parts and whatnot and logistics have been disrupted. So we're trying to ramp up everything, but then sometimes, if we have a partner go down or, they can't deliver us the materials, there's a lot of complexity that we're seeing about 10 to 12 weeks.
And to elaborate on that, as an authorized distributor, Global Test Supply does have orders for a wide variety of the cameras. We are fulfilling orders on a first come, first served basis. We're going to try and get our hands on inventory as our demand gets higher. To Heather, to touch on that, if you have any questions about cost, how to get your organization set up with an account with us, please email sales@globaltestsupply.com, and either myself or one of our sales team representatives will get in touch with you and give you all the information on that. We have gone a little bit over, so Russell, thank you very much for staying around for the question and answers for the great presentation. I'll remind everyone, if you did not get any, if you didn't get a chance to ask a question, didn't get a question that you may have answered, please again use the email address sales@globaltestsupply.com, and we will get any and all questions that you have answered. So on behalf of Global Test Supply University, we want to thank you for attending the webinar today, and I really do hope you found it informative and helpful. We are here to help you, as I just reminded you. Use the email address, visit our website to see all the different options that we have and our contact information, and we will get back to you within a day or two at the very maximum. We do understand that during this time, these types of solutions are pressing need. At the end of this webinar, there is going to be a very short survey. I'd ask you to please take the time to complete it. It's going to help us get your feedback, assist us with improving these types of webinars, and finding out the topics that you guys want us to cover for future webinars as well. Also, don't forget that for attending, and a big thank you for attending the webinar today, your name will be entered into a draw to win $100 for your next online order. The winner will be announced on our social media channels, so please stay tuned and take a look out for those channels. Again, I want to thank Russell very much for the presentation, for sticking around. It was fantastic. Thank you everyone for joining. I hope you all have a safe, healthy, and great rest of the day. Thank you, everyone.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everybody.